Stop scrolling, because what you're about to hear will change everything you think you know about Michael Jordan. Behind the rings, the fame, and the empire lies a secret so raw, so gut-wrenching, it could break the strongest heart. A boy rejected, a father lost too soon, a family pushed to the edge, and the greatest athlete on earth, forced to pay a price most of us couldn't survive. This isn't basketball. This is the untold story they never show, the scars behind the Jumpman. At 62, something happened to Jordan that no highlight reel could ever capture. A loss so deep, so human, it shook him to his very core. The question is, can even the greatest of all time survive what he went through? Today, you're about to see the man behind the legend, and it might leave you completely speechless. The rejection that built a monster. February 17, 1963, Wilmington, North Carolina. A small house held together by love, discipline, and the relentless grind of a working-class family struggling to survive. Inside, a boy named Michael Jordan took his first breath. The fourth of 5 children. Nobody special. Nobody chosen. Just another kid in a crowded home where food was scarce and dreams were a luxury they couldn't afford. His father, James R. Jordan Sr., worked brutal hours as a mechanic and factory supervisor, his hands stained with grease, his back bent from years of hard labor. His mother, Dolores, balanced shifts at a local bank while raising 5 children with an iron fist wrapped in love. There was no room for weakness in the Jordan household, no excuses, no shortcuts. "You want something in this world?" his father would tell him. "You fight for it." And fight he did, but not well enough. Michael grew up in the shadow of his older brother Larry. Faster, stronger, better. Every backyard game ended the same way. Larry winning, Michael losing. Every race to the driveway. Every jump shot in the fading Carolina sunlight. Every single competition ended with Michael's second place. "I always thought Larry was better than me," Michael would confess years later, and you can still hear the wound in his voice when he says it. Imagine that. The greatest basketball player in history spent his childhood believing he'd never be good enough. Then came 1978, the moment that would either destroy him or forge him into something the world had never seen. Emsley A. Laney High School, a crowded hallway buzzing with teenage energy. A piece of paper tacked to the wall, the varsity basketball roster, boys crowding around it, some erupting in celebration, others walking away with slumped shoulders. 15-year-old Michael Jordan pushed through the crowd. His heart pounded against his ribs so hard he thought everyone could hear it. His palms sweated. His throat went dry. He scanned the names. Once, twice, 3 times. His name wasn't there, not even close. The world tilted. The hallway sounds became distant echoes underwater. His chest tightened until breathing felt impossible. He turned before anyone could see his face crumple, before the tears could betray him, and walked home through streets that suddenly felt longer than they ever had before. When he finally reached his bedroom, he shut the door, and he broke. "I cried," he would admit decades later, his voice still cracking with the memory. "I went to my room and I just cried." But then, something happened. His father appeared in the doorway. James didn't offer empty comfort or false promises. He sat beside his son in the dim light of that small bedroom and spoke words that would echo through history. "Every great man rises from rejection, son. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" That night, in that moment, Michael Jordan picked up a basketball. Bounce, bounce, bounce. The sound filled the room like a heartbeat, like a war drum, like a promise being carved into the universe itself. Bounce, bounce, bounce. Each dribble whispered, "Never again." And the monster began to wake. From invisible to unstoppable, what followed was transformation through fire. Michael woke before dawn broke over Wilmington. While his classmates slept, he ran through empty streets. While they ate breakfast, he shot baskets until his arms trembled and sweat blinded him. While they watched television, he practiced in the dark, the only light coming from a single porch bulb, the only sound the rhythmic bounce of a ball hitting concrete. Again, and again, and again. He didn't just want to make varsity. He wanted to prove that everyone who overlooked him was wrong, that the coaches who cut him were fools, that his name belonged at the top of every list. Pain became discipline. Rejection became fuel. Humiliation became hunger. By 1981, scouts across the nation knew his name. The University of North Carolina came calling, and Michael Jordan, no longer the forgotten kid, but not yet the legend, stepped onto a stage that would change everything. Chapel Hill felt enormous, intimidating. The campus stretched before him like a cathedral, and he was just a skinny freshman carrying ghosts no one else could see. Late at night, when doubt crept into his dorm room like smoke, he'd call home. His father's voice became his lifeline, steady and sure. "You belong there, Mike. Don't you forget it." Then came March 29th, 1982. The NCAA championship game, Georgetown versus North Carolina, the entire nation watching. And with 17 seconds left, championship on the line, the ball found Michael Jordan's hands. Time fractured. The arena lights dimmed into a tunnel. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. Every fear, every doubt, every moment of rejection flashed through his mind in an instant. And then he rose. The shot left his fingertips like destiny itself. The world held its breath. Swish. The net exploded. The crowd erupted. North Carolina won. But more than that, a legend was born. "That shot gave me the confidence to be Michael Jordan," he would say years later. Everything changed after that. In June 1984, the Chicago Bulls selected him third overall. A 7-year, $6 million contract. The professional arena. The world stage. The boy who cried in his bedroom was about to become the man who made the world weep with joy. The Dynasty and the Darkness. Fast forward to 1991. Michael Jordan, at 28, was no longer a prodigy. He was a warrior forged in the blood and sweat of playoff battles, his psyche scarred by the Jordan rules of Detroit's bad boys. The memory of 3 straight postseason eliminations was a ghost that haunted his every waking moment. It fueled countless solitary nights in empty gyms, the only sounds the rhythmic dribble of the ball, his own labored breathing, and the persistent hum of fluorescent lights as he pushed his body beyond known human limits. When the Bulls finally broke through, exorcising their demons and defeating Magic Johnson's legendary Lakers, Chicago didn't just celebrate. The city wept in the streets. Jordan had delivered the miracle they'd prayed for through decades of sporting heartbreak. He cradled that first Larry O'Brien championship trophy not with a smile, but with a cathartic heaving sob, a release of half a decade of pent-up frustration and vindication. Then came 1992, a dominant repeat, punctuated by his shrug game in the NBA Finals, a moment of such sublime, effortless mastery that even he was left in awe of his own abilities. Then 1993, battling Charles Barkley's Phoenix Suns in a scorching series, clinching the title with a staggering 41 points per game average. A three-peat, an achievement so rare in the modern era, it felt less like a sports accomplishment and more like a myth carved from stone. Off the court, a parallel empire was rising, forever changing the relationship between athletes and commerce. Air Jordan sneakers transcended footwear. They were wearable sculptures of defiance and flight. The Jumpman logo became a global hieroglyph for excellence. That first year alone, the line generated a seismic $130 million in revenue, transforming the North Carolina teenager once cut from his varsity team into a billion-dollar global icon, a symbol of aspiration on every playground from Chicago to Shanghai. And through the roaring adulation and blinding flashbulbs, one quiet, constant figure remained anchored in the stands. James Jordan, his father. Always there with his camcorder, a proud, steady presence capturing the whirlwind, his beaming smile a silent testament to a father's love. He was Michael's sanctuary, the man who fixed the backboard in the backyard and now watched his son conquer the world. But success, as Michael was about to learn, casts the longest, most treacherous shadows. The very fame that lifted him to the heavens also constructed a gilded cage. He could no longer go to the movies, walk down a street, or enjoy a quiet meal. The relentless pressure to be his airness for fans, media, and sponsors was a 24/7 performance. A deep, gnawing emptiness began to grow behind the iconic smile. The competitive fire that burned so brightly on the court had nothing left to consume in the off-season, leaving him feeling hollowed out. Whispers began to circulate, not about his game, which was untouchable, but about his pastimes. His competitive nature had found a dangerous outlet in the high-stakes world of gambling, from the golf courses to the back rooms of casinos. The stories, once quiet murmurs, grew into a deafening roar, threatening to tarnish the pristine image he and his corporate partners had so carefully built. The NBA, wary of a scandal, launched quiet inquiries. By the summer of 1993, at just 30 years old, Michael Jordan stood at the absolute, undisputed peak of human achievement. 3 consecutive championships, unrivaled global fame, a cultural influence that had reshaped American identity. He was, by every outward measure, invincible, or so everyone believed. For the darkness was gathering, not on a basketball court, but on a lonely highway in North Carolina. And the invincible man was about to be shattered by a loss that no amount of talent, wealth, or willpower could ever reverse. The dynasty was over. The real battle for his soul was just beginning. July 23, 1993, the day heaven fell. Some dates are written in blood. July 23, 1993, began like any other summer day. Hot Carolina sun. Plans for the future. Michael had just spoken with his father, a normal conversation between a son and his anchor, between a legend and the man who made him believe legends were possible. It would be their last. That night, James R. Jordan Sr. was attacked while resting in his car by strangers. The violence was senseless, the cruelty unfathomable. And when it was over, a father was gone and a son was shattered. When the news reached Michael, it didn't arrive as words. It arrived as collapse, the phone slipping from his hand, his mother's voice trembling on the other end, the world spinning into chaos. The brightest flame in basketball lost the light that guided him. At the funeral, witnesses watched Jordan, the man the world called unbreakable, tremble as he laid his hand on the casket. His shoulders shook, not with the power that once carried Chicago, but with a sorrow so human, so raw, that it brought veterans and strangers to tears. "My dad was my rock," Michael whispered. But the truth cut deeper. James wasn't just his fan. He was his foundation. And when that foundation cracked, even the greatest athlete in the world felt the ground disappear. 3 months later, on October 6, 1993, Michael Jordan did the unthinkable. He retired. At 30, at the absolute height of his powers, he walked away from basketball. Not because his body failed, but because his heart had been broken beyond repair. Then came the decision that baffled millions: baseball. Critics laughed. Analysts called it foolish. But they didn't understand. This wasn't about winning. This was about a promise. His father had always dreamed of watching his son play professional baseball. So Michael, grieving and lost, joined the Birmingham Barons minor league team wearing number 45, his childhood baseball number. Dawn after dawn, he arrived before sunrise, his hands blistered from gripping the bat. Bus rides through small southern towns, cheap hotels, laughter from critics who couldn't see the deeper truth. "Every swing was a prayer from my father," he would confess. For 17 months, Michael searched for himself in the shadow of loss. And then, on March 18th, 1995, he sent 2 words into the world that thundered louder than any headline in sports history. "I'm back." Resurrection and the price of perfection. The man who returned to the court at 32 wasn't the same Michael Jordan the world had last seen. He was leaner, quieter, carrying a silence heavier than any trophy. The fire that had always driven him was still there, but it was tempered now by reflection, by grief, and by the awareness of what he had lost in stepping away. He had left the game once, seeking solace from the pressures of perfection, yet fate had other plans. The early weeks of his comeback were grueling. His timing was off. The court that once felt like an extension of his body now seemed alien. His joints protested. His legs ached in ways they hadn't before. And yet, every night, long after fans had gone home and the echoes of the arena had faded, Jordan stayed behind, shooting alone, repeating movements until the custodian had to switch off the lights. Sweat, fatigue, and pain became the currency of his resurrection. Then came the 1995-96 season, the season that would announce to the world that Michael Jordan had returned, not as a man seeking redemption, but as a force reclaiming his throne. At 33, he led the Chicago Bulls to an unprecedented 72-10 record, the greatest regular season in NBA history. Every game, every shot, every play was a reminder that greatness isn't given. It is earned again and again, even after absence, even after doubt. Yet it was the night of June 11th, 1997, that immortalized his comeback in ways statistics never could: the flu game. Michael woke that evening with a 103-degree fever, his body shaking with every step. Doctors warned him, teammates pleaded, and his body screamed for rest. But he refused. He stepped onto the court anyway, his presence alone defying the limits of human endurance. For 48 minutes, Jordan battled not just the Utah Jazz, but every fiber of his exhausted body. He stumbled, wavered, and leaned on Scottie Pippen when the final buzzer sounded, scoring 38 points despite weakness that would have forced lesser men to collapse. That image, him, barely able to stand, leaning on a teammate, became a symbol not just of athletic prowess, but of the human capacity to rise when every instinct says stop. It was more than a game. It was a sermon on perseverance, resilience, and the cost of greatness. By 1998, the dynasty he had built with the Bulls faced its inevitable twilight. Teammates aged, the front office wavered, and the once unstoppable momentum began to fray. The finals arrived, tense and decisive, culminating in Game 6. The score was tied, the seconds ticking away like a drumbeat of destiny. Jordan dribbled right, crossed left, stepped back, and launched a shot so smooth, so almost ethereal, that time itself seemed to pause. The ball soared, spinning through the air like a moment suspended between fear and faith. Swish, 6 championships, 6 final shots, the perfect ending to a story no one could have scripted. But beneath the glory, behind the highlight reels, was the cost, the hours of solitude, the relentless drive, the body that begged for mercy, the sacrifices unseen by the cheering crowds. Michael Jordan's return wasn't just about winning. It was about proving to himself and the world that even after absence, even after doubt, the human spirit can rise again, and that perfection, however fleeting, demands everything in its pursuit. When home becomes hollow. Here's what the world didn't see. While Michael conquered arenas, his home was quietly falling apart. He had met Juanita Vanoy in the late 1980s when he was still climbing. Their early love existed in whispered conversations, hands clasped in quiet cars, dreams traded before dawn. When they married in 1989, he believed he was building forever. 3 children arrived: Jeffrey, Marcus, Jasmine. Their home glowed with warmth. Tiny shoes beside championship rings, bedtime stories in trophy-lined hallways. But fractures in marriage don't begin with earthquakes. They begin with hairline cracks nobody notices, a missed recital, a holiday interrupted, a goodnight kiss over the phone because he was in another city, another arena, another obligation. Juanita raised 3 children, often alone, while Michael shouldered the weight of a dynasty. They still loved each other, but the space between them stretched wider with every season. "I wish I had been home more," Michael would admit years later, one of the most vulnerable confessions of his life. In 2002, after 13 years of marriage, Juanita filed for divorce. The process stretched 4 agonizing years. When it finalized in 2006, the $168 million settlement made headlines worldwide. But money was never the story. The truest moment came when Michael stepped out of the courthouse into cold Chicago air, realizing that for all his rings and records, there was one loss greatness could never undo: the loss of the home he believed he could protect. Yet something beautiful emerged. They refused to turn wounds into weapons. No public battles, no televised hatred, just respect as they rebuilt as co-parents. Presence matters more than perfection, Jordan would reflect. The hardest lesson, learned too late. Love, loss, and second chances. Time passed in quiet rooms, in the spaces between accolades, trophies, and the roar of stadiums. Michael Jordan had endured heartbreak that few could imagine. He had lost his father, the man who had been his guide and moral compass. He had seen a marriage crumble under the weight of fame, expectations, and personal ambition. For a while, even he struggled to recognize himself outside the glare of public adoration. The man who had soared above every challenge, who had achieved greatness on the court and in business, found himself grounded by loss, searching for meaning in a life that felt hollow without the intimacy of family and love. Then, as if fate had decided he had learned enough lessons from grief, love whispered again. Her name was Yvette Prieto. She saw him not as the billionaire, not as the icon, not as the legend the world worshipped, but as the man behind the fame, the one who had been broken and rebuilt, the one yearning for something real. Their conversations were soft, careful, and deliberate. 2 people stepping gently through the ruins of their pasts, learning to trust again, learning that love could be patient, steady, and grounding. When they married in 2013, Michael was 50. It wasn't a Hollywood fairy tale. It was a commitment forged from understanding, patience, and the lessons of pain. And when their twin daughters, Victoria and Isabel, arrived in 2014, their home bloomed with a joy he hadn't felt in decades. Laughter filled halls that had long been silent. The clatter of little feet echoed in rooms that once felt too big and empty. For the first time in a long time, Michael felt the true weight of presence, the quiet satisfaction of being there, fully, for someone who depended on him in ways trophies never could. He had missed so many moments the first time. Little birthdays, first steps, quiet bedtime talks, moments he could never reclaim. Now, with a second chance gently placed in his hands, he whispered a promise: "I won't lose this one." He turned his phone face down more often, stayed home longer, and made conscious choices to prioritize presence over pressure. He learned that love, like basketball, demanded focus, patience, and resilience. But the stakes this time were human hearts, not championships. Even beautiful chapters carry storms. Yvette had to learn how to live beside a man the world still chased relentlessly. Michael wrestled with splitting himself between his vast business empire and the needs of a young family. Nights were long, days were demanding. The world outside the Florida estate still expected the Michael Jordan of old. But the difference this time? Choice. When tension arose, they returned to center. Not to ego, not to the past, but to their daughters, to their shared life, to the conscious decision to fight with each other rather than against. Every challenge became a lesson in compromise, patience, and devotion. In the serene spaces of his Florida estate, Michael Jordan gradually transformed. He became a man no longer defined solely by how high he could fly, but by how faithfully he could stay. By the depth of his presence, the love he could nurture, and the quiet victories that mattered most. This chapter of his life is a testament to the power of second chances, the resilience of the human heart, and the profound understanding that real greatness isn't measured by what you achieve. It's measured by how fully you show up for the people who need you most. From loss to legacy, Michael Jordan's hardest lessons. By 2020, Michael Jordan thought life had finished testing him. He was wrong. On a quiet January morning, the world stopped. Kobe Bryant was gone. Not just a superstar, not just a rival, but the closest thing Michael ever had to a little brother. The student who called at 2 a.m. to learn. The player who pushed him harder than anyone else. Kobe, his daughter Gianna, and 7 others perished in a helicopter crash, leaving 9 lives extinguished in an instant. On February 24, 2020, Michael stood at the memorial, walking slowly as if carrying the weight of those lost. When he spoke, his voice broke immediately. Tears streamed down his face as millions watched a man long perceived as unbreakable tremble before them. When Kobe died, a little piece of me died, he said. It wasn't a prepared line. It was a wound speaking out loud. The midnight calls, the teasing questions, the lessons shared in silence, all vanished in a heartbeat. For Michael, this loss wasn't just personal. It was a mirror of the fragility of life, a reminder that even the brightest stars aren't promised time. Yet, from the ashes of grief, Michael built something enduring. At 62, his empire spans billions. A Florida mansion, an unparalleled car collection, priceless watches, and the Jordan brand, generating billions in revenue, with Michael personally earning over $150 million in royalties annually. But today, his life is defined not by wealth, but by purpose. He chooses stillness over spectacle, privacy over the public eye, savoring dinners with Yvette and their twin daughters, cherishing the sound of small footsteps echoing through hallways. He invests in health clinics, youth centers, and scholarships, understanding that true greatness isn't measured in trophies or money, but in the lives you touch. Michael Jordan's journey through unimaginable loss, from Kobe to the weight of his own trials, reveals the truth of his legacy. Success without service is empty, fame without impact is hollow, and the lessons of grief can transform even the greatest into something more human, more empathetic, and more enduring. So I'll ask you one last time. Was it worth it? Michael Jordan achieved everything: the fame, the fortune, the championships. But every triumph carried a cost, loss, heartbreak, and sacrifices that would have broken most of us. And yet, here he stands at 62, not untouched, not perfect, but resilient, present, and at peace with the life he's built. The real lesson isn't about winning titles. It's about rising after every fall, learning from grief, carrying your scars, and finding strength in the moments you thought you couldn't go on. Every setback, every heartbreak, every challenge shaped him. And it can shape you too. Your story is still being written. Your rise is still possible. Greatness isn't about never breaking. It's about the courage to stand up again, to keep moving forward, and to live fully even when the world tests you beyond measure.